Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Kartik, one of the co-founders of ETHGlobal, and I'm super excited to welcome all of you to LFGHO. Let's get started. All of you are watching this on ETHGlobal.tv. A happy new year to all of you, and this is what we'll be using for the rest of this hackathon and the summit. This is where you can watch the live stream, interact with all of our speakers, and chat with all of us and ask any questions, and we'll be able to in real time relay all these things on the other side. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, ETHGlobal is an organization with a very simple mission, and we're proudly helping organize this event. And our goal is to onboard thousands of developers into the Web3 ecosystem. We do this by doing two things. We run hackathons and we run summits, both in person and async. This is our first async event of the year, and we're going to be doing both of these things for LFGHO. We're going to have a summit talking about all the things happening in the world of RWAs, payments, stablecoins, and DeFi. But for the first half, what I want to do is talk about the hackathon. So before we get started with any of the summits, let's learn a quick intro on how everything is going to work for the next 2 weeks and everything they need to know. This is already a massive event. We have over 800 hackers from 72 different countries, spanning 23 different time zones participating in LFGHO. They're excited to build so many things related to payments, stablecoins, and RWAs. So we can't wait to see what everybody submits. And just to see where people are coming from, you can see the representation from 6 different continents. It's kind of incredible to see so many people excited to build in 2024. And I want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and tell us more about what they're excited about on our Discord. On top of the hackers, we also have 4 amazing ecosystem partners and 8 dedicated mentors who are going to be helping out with any questions related to any of the protocols here to make sure that you are never blocked or stuck on building anything that you are excited about. And together, everybody's giving over $75,000 in prizes. So we'll cover some of the information on what these prizes are, how you can win them, and more details around how you can qualify and any documentation and rules that you need to be aware of. I want to quickly thank our incredible partners. So first we have Go, Aave, Family, and Chainlink. You'll get to meet all of them here on the Discord and talk to them directly. They'll also be joining a lot of the sessions to help you get feedback to make your hackathon submission absolutely amazing. So the most important thing I want to do is talk about the next 10 days. You have until next Sunday to work on a project. So that's 3 days from now and the rest of the week. So we're going to cover how team formation works, how you can get help, all the prizes you can win, all the summits and talks, of course, after the logistics, and how judging and submission works. And of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, you can just put them on the ETHGlobal.tv chat, and we'll be able to address those questions for you. So the most important thing is communication. Everything that we're going to be doing for this hackathon is going to be on Discord. And these are private channels that are automatically controlled by the permissions that you have from your hacker dashboard on ethglobal.com. If you are confirmed as an attendee, you can just click on Sync with Discord. You'll get all the right permissions and you'll start seeing the left sidebar. There'll be an LFGHO header with all the relevant channels. And only people who are participating at the event will have access to these. So you get to talk to anybody from all the other hackers, to all of our mentors, to all of our partners, and anybody also on the ETHGlobal team. There's also dedicated channels to get help, which means if you go to the mentorship channel and mentorship help channel, you can post a question. Anybody who's watching this will be able to answer that, which includes also other hackers. And we have a lot of shifts here for people to help ensure that all of your questions are being addressed and you are always unblocked. On top of all of that, this is a massive asynchronous event. So everything that's going to be happening for the whole course of this event is going to be communicated to you ahead of time. And also a calendar invite will be sent to you directly to the email you signed up with, which means you can see when everything is happening, normalized to your own time zone. And you can get a really early look on all the workshops, sessions, talks, feedback sessions, everything else in between, including judging. The website is the main source of truth, which means that if anything changes, we update the website first and then we communicate it to everybody on Discord. We really want this thing to be asynchronous as much as possible. So everything here is publicly kept up to date on the website. The website is ETHGlobal/LFGHO. Not ETHGlobal.com, ETHGlobal.al/LFGHO. So you get to quickly go to the event and you can see everything on the website and also on your Hacker dashboard. So let's get into how the hackathon works. This is an event that is focused on the Go stablecoin. So we'll kind of cover some nuances there, but officially the hackathon has started and you can start building your projects now. This gives you until Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern, January 21st to submit and finish your projects. And you can work on your projects with up to 5 members in a team. You have basically the next 10 days, 1.5 weeks to hack, and we'll cover all the things around what matters when you're submitting. So let's talk about some of the quick rules here. In addition to your project being related to Go, everything that you are doing must be done from scratch. This is an event around the future of the Go stablecoin and how we can leverage different means of payments and stablecoins in the Aave ecosystem. So we want to see some creative ideas around that. And to make sure everything is fair, we want to make sure that nobody is building on a pre-existing project they've worked on and getting a head start when others are starting from beginning. It also means that only RSVP'd hackers are eligible to win prizes, which means that if your team members do not get listed as a team member on your dashboard and they're not showing up and it says they haven't confirmed, then in case you win any prizes, only you will be getting that prize, or anybody who's listed on that team page will be getting that prize. So please make sure that all of your team members and colleagues are confirmed and paired up on your dashboard as a part of your team. Also, if you have any other questions, you can message us anytime and we'll be happy to address those questions for you. A common one we really get is when we say everything has to be done from scratch, it does not exclude you from using open source projects and libraries or even scaffolding. If you want to fork an open source project of a prominent DeFi app, you are more than welcome to do so, and you're welcome to add on top of it, but you cannot work on a project that you did yourself and add more features to it and submit that as part of this event. Now let's talk about judging. Submissions are due on Sunday, the 21st at 12 p.m. Eastern. That is exactly the same time right now. It's 12:15 right now. And here are some of the submission guidelines. You will be required to submit a 4-minute video of your demo. This means you get to talk about everything you've done, who you are, why you got excited about it, and submit that as the official project of what you worked on. And we really recommend that you don't do this thing last minute, because condensing everything that you've been doing for 10 days into just 4 minutes is not easy. You will need to do anywhere from multiple revisions to cut things out, to edit some of the things. If some transactions are taking too long, you need to know what to do in that window. All those things will require some planning and thought. So please leave at least 1.5 to 2 hours for just a 4-minute video, because it is the only thing that everybody looks at. So you want to make sure it has all the important ideas you want to communicate. And you get to do all of that on your Hacker dashboard. You get to submit everything there directly. In a few days, you'll be able to see all the questions that you will have to answer during the submission process. You can spend any time up to the Sunday deadline to understand the things that you have to be aware of and things that you have to write. We require a lot of extensive information around how you're using a different protocol or a different library, and where in the lines you have to link to the code directly and prove that this is how you're using it, to talking about how everything works under the hood on the backend side, and why you chose to work on the project and everything in between. So you will have to kind of spend a fair amount of time specifying how everything works under the hood, and we really recommend that you don't do this last minute. After you submit, you'll be given a choice to pick a track for how judging will apply to you. There are 2 ways to do that. There's a main judging track and a partner prize judging track. The main judging track is synchronous, and it's set up in 2 rounds, and the partner prize judging track is entirely asynchronous. And I'll cover how both of these work and how they are different from each other. So let's talk about the main judging track. This is a 2-round track, which means that if you want to be part of the top 10 teams, you get to say, I would like to be on the main judging round. In this case, the first round is a asynchronous review by our judges of all of the projects, and they will be looking at the prototype, the MVP, your video, your commit history to make sure that nobody committed 100,000 lines in a single commit. They followed proper guidelines, they documented everything, and they showed iterative progress. And it's a project that actually solves interesting problems and has been worked on in accordance to the event rules. Those projects get reviewed the same day, and on Monday, they get notified, or at the end of Sunday, they get notified if they're moving to round 2. Round 1 happens asynchronously, and they'll immediately be notified for round 2, where the round 2 is a actual synchronous call with our judges. So for round 2, those teams who made it to round 2 come on to a Zoom call, and they are given 7 minutes to demo what they built, and the judges get to ask them questions in real time. And from that, we select the top 10 teams that will present at the closing ceremony for this hackathon. That's the main judging track. Then it's the partner prize judging track. So the key thing to remember here is that if you are selecting the main judging track, you are also automatically qualifying for the partner prizes. You don't have to pick between not winning a partner prize. You get to do that in both. However, if you pick the partner prize judging track, you do not get to be qualified for the top 10. So this means if you only want to apply and get feedback on a partner's prize, you submit your project and select this track, and all the partners asynchronously review your video, which means that the only information they have to look at everything that you want to do is the video itself and all the description that you submitted as part of your project submission. So as long as you are verbose and you talk about everything and you cover all the points that they would like to know about, they get to look at that and evaluate which prize should be awarded to what team. On top of that, this is asynchronous, which means that you don't have to present to them directly, and they will reach out to you if they have any questions or if they need any clarifications. So that covers both of those tracks. And to kind of sum all of this up, all of this thing really depends on the 4-minute video. So you want to make sure that the video is good, because everything, whether it's follow-up questions to understanding what's unique and novel or what hard thing that you ended up simplifying, all must be communicated in that video, because that is what everybody is going to be reviewing first. So make the video good. And of course, we do want this to be intimidating to anybody. And there's so many people here, hundreds of you at this hackathon who are new to all of this thing, and want to make sure that this is a comfortable environment for all of you to learn and actually understand how everything works under the hood. So there's a lot of talks, content, workshops for everybody from beginners to experts, and all of that has already begun. A lot of that is today. Some of it happened yesterday. Some of these will happen next week. We have all this stuff for all of you. And we're also doing a dedicated summit where we kind of talk about all the high-level themes and important things for you to be aware of that we know will become big in the next few months. Of course, any information that I missed or did not convey here, especially about the hackathon, is on the Hacker dashboard. You can see everything from all the specifics around judging timelines, how judging works, what you need to know of, what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, how check-ins work, how feedbacks work, sessions work. All that is also listed in a lot more detail into your info center, and you can see that on the tab at your Hacker dashboard. And of course, this is an asynchronous event, so everything that we're doing, whether it's a talk or a workshop, is recorded, including what I'm saying right now, and will be made instantly available on our YouTube channel, which is on ETHGlobal, youtube.com/ETHGlobal. So you can pause, rewind, and catch up at your own pace and your own time zone whenever you want to go back to something that you're interested in learning more about. And there's a lot of you who are still looking for team, and we recognize that, so don't worry. There's a lot of chances for you to find team members or work with somebody who already has an idea and can use your help. So head over to find a team channel on the Discord and introduce yourself and talk about what you are able to do and contribute with. And there'll be a lot of team members on the other side looking to join and work with you for the rest of this hackathon. And of course, people are here from 70 different countries, so I'd love to also learn more about who you are, what gets you excited, and be sure to introduce yourself in the LFGHO chat channel. There's also going to be brainstorming and team formation sessions. So if you are interested in being part of a live call to really understand how you can think about a good idea or get some feedback, or actually just pitch it to people and recruit some amazing, talented builders to be part of your project, you get to do that on a Zoom session as well. And you can see all that information on our website. And of course, it's not a requirement for you to work with a team. It just simplifies a lot of things if you have help. So don't feel obligated to find a team if you want to challenge yourself over the course of this event to learn something new or learn something that you wanted to do on your own that you haven't been able to. You can use this whole event to challenge yourself and get to be better at something that you did not have a lot of context in. So it's totally okay and possible to hack solo. You are not required to have a team. Now let's quickly talk about project check-ins. To make sure that we are able to help all of you stay on track with building your project, we'll be doing 2 check-ins next week. These are simple, quick forms, behave like daily stand-ups on your dashboard where you just say, everything I wanted to do is on track. I need help with X, or I've been waiting to get help on this thing, but I haven't been able to get help. And we look at all that stuff and we make sure that nothing is blocking you, which means if you are still stuck on some bug or nobody's been able to solve something that you've been spending a lot of hours on, you get to tell us that, and we get to find the right person to help fix that for you ASAP. All these things will happen twice next week, so we can make sure that you are getting ready to submit your projects on Sunday. And these are kind of required, so you want to just give us a quick update. It's just one person from your team has to just do this thing. It takes less than 5 minutes, and all of that will happen through your dashboard. And to make sure that you're also able to get some live feedback from some of our partners and mentors and even judges, you can join some of these feedback sessions. These are live calls where you get to talk about what you're building and how something works or how you're thinking about solving a problem. And somebody who's been doing this thing for a while or has a unique way to understand how something works behind the scenes will be able to give that feedback. So we'll be hosting 2 of these next week. The first session is going to be on Tuesday from 3 to 5 Eastern. And the second session is going to be on Wednesday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern. You get to join these calls. The invites will show up on your calendar, and you get to get live feedback from a lot of people in this space. And of course, we have our code of conduct. This, even though it's an asynchronous event, the same code of conduct and rules apply. And you can check out all that on ETHGlobal.com/rules. But the gist of it is that please be respectful to everybody in this space. There's almost 850 people, including all of our partners and mentors here participating in this hackathon from so many parts of the world. We want to make sure that everybody feels welcomed, and harassment and abuse in any form will not be tolerated. And the most important piece here is that anything that you build as part of this hackathon is solely owned by you and nobody else. So every team member for a project submission is equally the owner of the IP that gets created. So you are welcome to do whatever you'd like after your project submission ends. And of course, there's so many other edge cases that we haven't covered or things will come up for the first time. So if you need any help or if something hasn't been answered, please feel free to just ask those questions directly to us on email or Discord, and one of the ETHGlobal team members will be happy to answer any of those things for you. Everything that I've said is also available on our website, including the schedule and the info center and all the specifics. So just head over to ETHGlobal/LFGHO and you can see all those details again. Now let's get into some of our fun stuff around why this event is important and how you can take the best advantage of everything that's happening in the Aave ecosystem. So for this, I'd like to bring on Stani from Aave to share a quick intro on everything that they're doing and why they're excited and why you should be excited. So without further ado, let's welcome Stani.
Hey everyone, this is Stani Kulachov. So I'm the founder of the Aave Labs, and we are a software development company that built the Aave protocol and also Go stablecoin. And I want to give a warm welcome for everyone for joining Go Hackathon. So I'm super excited to see that we have already over 700 developers and builders participating in the first ever virtual hackathon that is focusing fully on Go. And Go as a stablecoin has an amazing vision. So obviously we want to use decentralization as a way of actually empowering financial applications. And down the line, Go could be going towards mainstream usage with payments, and obviously also providing a base layer for liquidity across the DeFi ecosystem. And during this hackathon, so we have over 50,000 K worth of Go worth of bounties in different tracks, from payments, vaults, facilitators, and integrations. And the idea of the hackathon is really about letting you to build whatever you feel, and it's fun, and unlock your creativity. It doesn't need to look anything like what is existing DeFi, and we value a lot of craft. So finishing good details, because the hackathon has multiple days. You have a good opportunity to build a product that could be used by wider audiences. You have time to focus on experience and design and good software engineering as well. And overall, hackathon is all about having fun and making friends along, and getting introduced into the world of DeFi. I wish everyone a great time, and let's go.
Awesome. Thanks, Donnie. Really good to kind of see that get kicked off, and I can't wait to see what everybody builds with Go, as it opens up so many new possibilities of rethinking how payments work on chain. So it's going to be awesome. And kind of speaking of all of that, let's go into kind of the final thing, which is prizes. So there's a lot of prizes being given away, 75,000 here. And we want to make sure that you have a good idea of how to think about those prizes and what qualifies and what these prizes are. So the first up is the Aave prize. Aave is giving multiple prizes. So the first one is in the payments category. So the best payment app with Go will receive $10,000, and the second project, the second place winner for this category, will win $7,000. Then you have the vaults category. So the best project leveraging the vaults here will win $7,000, and the second place team will be winning $4,500. And then there's a broader integration prize for Go, where anybody who qualifies here will be evenly splitting $10,000. So if 10 teams end up winning this or qualifying and following the rules, then every team gets 1,000. And depending on what the total count is, we just divide that from 10,000, and that's what everybody gets. Then we have Family. So Family is offering a pool prize for using ConnectKit. If your project is using ConnectKit, any project that successfully uses it will be splitting $5,000 with them. So this should be a very awesome way to integrate this as your Web3 provider. So try it out and use Family Wallet in your projects. And lastly, we have Chainlink. So the best project that uses CCIP and Go will win the $5,000 prize, and up to 3 teams can qualify here. So 3 teams can win $1,667 each for this category for using Chainlink CCIP with Go. All this information, again, is also on the website. You can click on the prize itself. You can see everything from the documentation to some of the code that you can use to start everything, to what the minimum criteria is to qualify, to all the sub nuances around what is a good way to think about solving a project and what does and doesn't qualify. All that is also on the website, so please check that out. And that covers all the specifics on the prizes. And of course, we want to make sure that this is a fun week for you. This event is meant to help you ease into understanding what's happening in the world of DeFi and Web3. So please pace yourself. You don't have to not sleep for 10 days. This doesn't have to be exhausting. We don't want it to be exhausting for you. And we really want you to have fun. You can use a whole week to understand what's happening, catch up on some talks and workshops, understand the code that's out there that's being made available for you to follow, and use all of that to put together things that you're excited to build. It is very much about experimentation and learning. And our goal here is to make sure that we can help you be successful at building something that personally excites you. We're not trying to have you solve someone else's problem. We want you to solve things that you're passionate about and provide you the tools that make it easy for you to do that. So with all of that, I want to wish all of you happy hacking, and we're going to get ready for our summit. Just a quick reminder, all the next steps here are now on Discord, which means if you have not already gone set up with Discord, please head over to ETHGlobal.com/Discord, and we'll get everything going for you ASAP. All right, so this was the official logistical update on the hackathon. Now we're getting ready to talk about all of our incredible summit. Our goal here is to talk about all things happening in the world of DeFi, RWA, and payments. And there's a lot for us to cover there. So we're going to trick it slowly and ramp up by giving you a better understanding of everything that's happening in the space. So this is the official LFGHO Summit. And I'll quickly give an intro on what we're expecting in the next 2 hours so you can get a good idea and you can get right back to hacking. So first up, we're going to start off with giving you an overview of Go and just how decentralized stablecoins work. After that, we'll be doing a short panel on DAO governance, especially on how Aave community shapes the future of Go. We're going to then talk about the RWA facilitation with Go as our third panel. And that will be the summit. So the first up is to make sure everybody has a really good understanding of Go and decentralized stablecoins. I want to bring on Emilio to talk about all these things. So without further ado, let's welcome Emilio on stage.
Hello, everyone. I can talk now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So my name is Emilio. I'm not sure if everything is okay because I already have the slides shared full screen. I guess so. For those who don't know me, I am currently VP for DeFi in Avara, and I am responsible for leading the engineering and innovation for the DeFi team, specifically Aave Labs, that works with the Aave protocol as a contributor to the Aave community, and also builds and contributes to other products as well. So one of the latest things that Aave Labs has built is Go, which is the main subject of this hackathon. So Go is a decentralized stablecoin integrated with the Aave protocol, and the nature of the stablecoin, we will discuss about it later, and how the basic design behind it. The main topic that I want to focus on, which is a topic that is particularly important, especially lately, because Go since launch has been facing a bit of challenges from the peg aspect, is how are we working on helping the stability of Go, and what's cooking in terms of new feature for guaranteeing that Go keeps a stable value over time. So let's go further. The first topic I want to talk about is what's stablecoin. I guess everyone listening is more or less aware of what a stablecoin is. But in general, a general definition of a stablecoin that we can give is a digital asset that closely tracks the value of an underlying real-world asset through generation, redemption, and stability. This means that we are mostly accustomed to call stablecoins USD-pegged stablecoins, but that's not the only kind of stablecoins. You can have stablecoins pegged to the gold value. You can have stablecoins pegged to a stock price. You can have stablecoins pegged to ETH or to Bitcoin, right? So the difference is that those are synthetically generated, so they are not actually backed by the real asset. It could be potentially, but then not only, but they are also backed through other meaningful mechanisms that we will discuss in the next slide. So what are this mechanism for which stable coins are usually generated. I would say that we can classify these mechanisms in three main categories. One is over-collateralized, the other one is centrally controlled, and the other one, which is a bit famous, let's say like this, because like of things that happened in the, recent years, is the algorithmic. So over-collateralized is the category at which Go belongs, and it's basically the asset is generated against a certain collateral, which is guarantee for the issuance of the asset. So whenever this asset is generated, a certain amount of collateral is locked within the system through which this asset is generated, and this collateral acts as a guarantee for the value of the asset itself. The system essentially ensures that generation and redemption at $1 is always possible, as long no bad debt exists and the over collateralization of the system is maintained. The second one is centrally controlled, which means that there is usually a centrally controlled entity that handles generation and redemption of the assets against the real assets. So typical examples of these are USDC, USDT, which are usually generated against USD supplies. So users usually give Tether or Circle real USD to be able to use this USD on chain. So they receive what is basically an IOU of the dollars that were deposited in the form of USDC and USDT. And the third one is it can use a variety of different mechanisms to algorithmically attempt to track the price of the underlying asset, in this case dollars, without maintaining any form of collateralization, centrally controlled or decentralized through decentralized protocols. Unfortunately, until now, no design has been found that is actually able to maintain a reliable peg and actually survive using algorithmic approaches. But we never know, in the future something else might actually appear or might be developed and actually manage to achieve this goal. So how does, like, let's focus for the purpose of this particular talk with over collateralized stable coins, and mentioning as well going forward centrally controlled. So how does how do over collateralized stable coins keep their peg? So we can classify the mechanism to sustain the peg of a stable coin in two main categories: soft peg mechanisms and hard peg mechanisms. So soft peg mechanisms are mechanisms that usually indirectly affect the value of the asset and the peg against the underlying. The typical example are the borrow rates, but there is also generation or redemption at a fixed price. This is how Go actually works and is integrated within the Aave protocol. Go within the Aave protocol doesn't have an oracle. It's like the value of Go is fixed to $1. So whenever you generate new Go, you basically have the opportunity to get them at $1. Whenever you redeem Go for the underlying, for the collateral, you will redeem it at the value also of $1, whatever is the value in the market is. This basically helps the peg because it creates an arbitrage opportunity. So if the value of Go is above 1 on the market, like, there is incentives for people to actually mint Go and sell on the market for a profit. And when Go is below peg, there is an incentive for people to buy from the market and repay their debt, or eventually to liquidate at a further profit than the sole liquidation bonus. The rates I already mentioned. So usually the rates are used as a way to incentivize or disincentivize further minting of the stablecoin. So whenever the asset is below peg, interest rates actually usually rise to disincentivize further mintings and help the price recovery. Whenever the asset is above peg, it means that there is demand on the market. So the borrow rates are low to incentivize further minting and allow users to capture the opportunity that I mentioned before. And then there is another approach that is, for example, used by Liquidity. That is quite peculiar. Liquidity doesn't have a interest rate, a borrow rate for LUSD. But what they have in exchange is generation and redemption fees. So every time like someone mints a new debt or redeems the stablecoin for the collateral, a fee is paid, and this fee adapts depending on what's the price of the market of the asset on the market. So it rises or decreases whether or not we want to incentivize or disincentivize further mintings. So these are the soft peg mechanisms. The hard peg mechanisms are, for example, direct redeemability against an underlying asset or a stablecoin with a stronger peg, which is what, like, for example, centrally controlled stablecoins do, or, for example, what Maker does through the peg stability module, and what Aave will do as well with Go through the Go stability module. Or another hard peg mechanism is the direct redeemability against the most under collateralized positions. So again, this is how, like, another peculiarity of Liquidity USD. So basically, when the asset goes below peg, there is an incentive for people to actually redeem the stablecoin against the least under collateralized position. So there is incentives to go and repay the debt for the least under collateralized position in exchange for the collateral, for $1 worth of collateral for each LUSD that is redeemed, minus the redemption fee that I mentioned before. Let's focus a bit on the borrow rates, which is the main topic of this talk, because, like, we are going to describe what is the current strategy for Go and what are future strategies that we want to adopt for Go and for helping maintaining the peg over time. So at the moment, Go uses a governance-controlled mechanism for borrow rates. In DAI, this is called stability fee. So what happens is that the DAO basically manages the borrow rates and decides what the proper borrow rates are depending on the state of the market. So if the asset is under peg, the governance decides to rise, acting a bit like a central bank or a central organization, decides to rise the interest rates for the borrowing, making the borrowing more expensive and incentivizing repayments. Or if it's a above peg, it makes the borrowing cheaper to incentivize further minting and helping dropping the price on the market. Or algorithmically controlled. So there is an interest rate curve that defines the interest rate of the asset depending on market condition. One example here is CRV USD, where in CRV USD, this particular formula is applied by using the peg keeper. That is another mechanism that they have to help maintaining the peg, to understand what's the situation on the market for CRV USD, and this dynamically adapts, increasing or decreasing the interest rate to make it cheaper or more expensive to borrow. We have something similar on the Aave protocol for assets, though, that are supplied. So the mechanism is similar, but the concept is different, because like the assets that are supplied, it works on a strict demand and supply relationship, rather than evaluating market conditions. But conceptually, they are very similar. So the interest rates fluctuate and are variable with very high variability. So as I mentioned, Go is currently using a governance control mechanism, which is the mechanism that was released. Was active since the release. There are a few problems with governance controlled rates. The first problem is that it requires a lot of governance overhead. So there is a lot of modeling needed, participation for people to vote, entities that are able to decide what the actual proper interest rate is. And it's also very slow to enact and react, because like it's slow. It usually takes days for a proposal to be approved, voted, and executed. And it's also slower to react, because if there are sudden changes in market conditions, then it requires, again, to bootstrap our whole process again to actually adapt the rates further. And it's also very hard to estimate properly. But also, by analyzing the only algorithmic interest rate approach that there is on the market, that is CRV-USD, what we want is not what CRV-USD does, which like brings a lot of variability. So there is uncertainty and lack of predictability on what the borrowers are going to pay, which is very similar, again, to what Aave offers with other stable coins. We want something that is a trade-off between the maintaining the peg and also predictability. So we want something that is actually that at least the borrower can have an idea of where the interest rates are directed, if they are an upward trend or downward trend, and like an estimate, for example, of how much they are going to spend in the I don't know, in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year from the time of the borrowing. So the initial idea that we had was to use PIDs. So PIDs, like it's are mathematical structures, very, very common in control theory, and they are basically used in general when we want to stabilize a certain parameter of a system around a certain value. So what happens is you very usually applied in industrial machines and applications. So what happens is that we usually have given a certain error ET, we have one component that is proportional to the error, one component that is the integral, that basically tracks the historical of the error, and another component that is derivative, that basically tracks the trend of the error. So how quickly the error is moving from the current value to the next value, and of the target value that we are actually aiming for. So initially we plan to use this. This would have required an oracle, which would have given like a TWAP of the past prices to basically estimate the historical error, and also use derivative approximation to basically approximate from the last n prices how is the trend, the acceleration of the variability. We tried to apply like the PID module. It felt very limiting. Like we were not completely satisfied with the results that we were getting, because it's the PID module are very limited. Like as I mentioned, again, you have the only variable that you can check is the error against the target value, and then like the only components that you can actually play with to try and approximate the value the best way that you can is just the proportional, derivative, and integral parts of the equation. So it felt very limiting and didn't perform the way we wanted. We wanted something that actually would be able to give not an actual rate, but a rate of increase or decrease of the borrow rate. So it would basically tell how fast we need to rise the interest rate to bring the asset back to the peg, and how fast we need to eventually decrease if the asset, increase if the asset is below peg, and decrease if the asset is above peg. So rather than outputting directly a borrow rate, we want something that would output a rate of increase of decrease of the borrow rate, and the system would update the borrow rate like continuously depending on this rate of increase and decrease. This way, we give the borrowers the possibility of understanding what's the trend in the interest rates, and eventually how fast this rate is changing, so that they can have an idea of how much they are spending. So this is because we basically, with Go, we want to have the Aave protocol offering a different protocol than other stablecoins that are already listed on Aave, that are based on full variable interest rates. So the interest rates can be 3% today and 64% tomorrow. There is really no guarantee of what or capacity to predict what the interest rate will be. So we have been evaluating other options rather than PIDs, and what we realized is that we actually needed more control inputs, not just the error, but we also want the ability to embed into mechanism like an evaluation of the current market conditions, an evaluation possibly of the state of the GSM. So what's the ratio between the assets that are supplied in the GSM, because this tells us how much we can expect to sustain the current peg, for example. So we decided to use another technique that is very, very common in control logic, that is called in control theory, that is called fuzzy logic. So what's fuzzy logic? I would say that it's a very novel application of control theory to blockchain, because I'm not aware of anyone using fuzzy logic for interest rate controllers. So it's a form like you basically have a logic that it's not just 0 or 1, so not just true or false, but it's based basically on degrees of truth. So the idea is that you have input values that are hard values called crisp values, and then you map those crisp values in sets that define the state of the system, or the belonging to a certain set, depending on the value itself. So these sets usually go from 0 to 1. So you can, let's imagine, for example, temperature. You can define a temperature as high, very high, medium, or low. So you have, I don't know, 20 degrees, for example, has a certain membership of 0.5 within the medium set, and a very low membership on the high and on the low, which means that basically this allows to approximate a bit like the way humans reason, right? For us, temperature is never, like, first of all, is subjective, so it's never super cold or super hot for everyone. But also we usually approximate values in a way that are actually like not hard true or old false, but there are usually degrees of membership and evaluation. So the idea with Go is to use this particular technique to be able to approximate the peg and the way that the interest rates need to react. So how does fuzzy logic work? We have basically three major components with this particular technology. One is falsification, then the definition of the fuzzy sets and the rules, and the third one is the falsification. So once you apply you falsify your values, so you pass from hard readings to values of membership within the sets, and you apply the rules, then you basically get the output of the rules, and from the output of the rules you defalsify the value to get a hard number. In the case of Go, what we are going to get is the rate of increase or decrease of the current borrow rate. So again, falsification. So the simplest value that we can use to understand falsification is the current price, right, of Go. So let's say the current price of Go is 0.98. We define a set which defines the peg as very much off peg, average off peg, in peg, average off peg on the below peg, and very much off peg below peg. And with these sets, the current price will belong to certain sets. So 98 is, we can say, very much below peg with membership 1. So we can say, for example, is the lowest value that we are willing to accept within the sets, right? So we can apply after that we define these rules that essentially gives us how the system should react based on the fuzzy values that we get. So one rule, for example, could be if the distance from the peg value is high, like in the example before, 0.98, and the value is negative, the rate of acceleration of the interest rate is very high. So that is a rule that defines how the acceleration of the interest rate should behave depending on the state of the peg. So the third step is, so for example, in the example that I did before, 0.98 is very much off peg. So this rule would be satisfied with value 1, which is essentially the maximum. This gives the maximum rate of acceleration. And the last step is the falsification. So translating the values, the outputs given by the formulas to actual values of acceleration. So again, we define some sets that map the results of the rules, and from these sets, they will we essentially obtain actual values that we apply to the borrow rates. So there are a variety. We can discuss a lot. Like, it would require way more time to actually describe the fuzzy logic in detail. But let's say that this should be enough to give a basic understanding of how we plan to apply this mechanism to the Go borrow rates. So the interesting thing compared to PID is that while in PID you have only one input, which is the current price. With fuzzy logic, you can apply a variety of inputs that all contribute at the end to actually decide what the rate of acceleration of the peg should be. So, for example, the first three that you read here, distance from the peg, historical of the distance from the peg, and rate of acceleration, these three will actually map exactly what the PID was mapping before. But in addition to that, we can add, for example, balances of the GSM, state of the secondary market, or really anything that we can possibly bring on chain. So, for example, an oracle that gives us the state of the market liquidity of Go across centralized exchange. If we have an oracle that gives that, we can write a rule that actually will actually contribute together with all the other rules in defining what the rate should be. This gives us essentially the flexibility to cover anything that we need to basically manage the interest rates depending on the state of the peg. The rules will be defined on chain, so the contract will actually have all the rules that will be, and those rules will be it will be possible to be extended by the governance. So the governance will be able to add more rules with eventually more input values. And the approaches to the falsification, so there are a variety of mechanisms that you can translate the output of the rules to actual values. Also, this will be it will be possible to customize, and the governance can decide eventually by monitoring the system if other methods of falsification can actually be better suited for the state of the market and the current usage of Go. So what are the next steps? We are currently building a model in Python to simulate this rate mechanism. We will run this model in Python against the historical of the peg. Soon the GSM will also go live. Unfortunately, will not help at the beginning because the state of Go is currently below peg. So the GSM really helps when the asset is above peg. So after that, there will be a stage of validation by the governance to understand if the governance accept this solution. And after that, and after running again the simulation, we will execute the on-chain proposal to activate the new interest rate model, and then monitor the performance in production to essentially be able to evaluate if the initial set of rules was targeted properly, if the diversification that was chosen was targeted properly. Therefore, we will monitor the performance of the default implementation of the strategy to adjust it accordingly depending on how it performs. So in conclusion, stability is a very, very complicated topic, as demonstrated by many events in the past. It is very hard for a stablecoin to maintain the peg of all times. We should accept that stablecoins can lose the peg from time to time. It basically happened to all the stablecoins, even the centrally controlled ones, at a certain phase of their life. This is part of the life of a stablecoin. The automated mechanisms usually provide faster response times compared to centralizing or governance-controlled mechanisms, and that this, of course, will help Go reach and maintain the peg, but this also cannot be the only mechanism we rely on to actually reliably maintain Go on peg. Use cases and growth are always very important to incentivize people to participate in using the asset, in holding the asset, and make sure that the asset is actually the asset can scale to the full of its capabilities. So that's it. I don't really know if I'm on time, over time, because there is no timer here, but that covers everything, and I would say thanks everyone. I don't know if I can accept questions. Otherwise, yeah, that's it.
Emilio, that was actually very amazing and detailed. There actually are a lot of questions, but we are over time. So my request would be for you to go to ETHGlobal.tv and just answer those questions in the chat, because there's a lot of questions about how the peg works and how you actually think about the mechanism for getting all of the redemptions, and just kind of how the facilitators and PAD control works. So there's really good 4 or 5 questions. If you can just go to ETHGlobal.tv and reply in the chat,
yeah,
I'm sure
we'll go over
attendees will appreciate that. So thanks again. Really amazing to kind of have a deeper understanding of how the protocol works, which will give all the 800 plus hackers a good idea for what they can do. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
That was Emilio talking about Go and decentralized stablecoins. But next up, we want to get into how governance shapes all of this. So we're going to bring on an amazing set of speakers in a panel. I'm going to bring on David, Andrew, Fig, and Paul, where David will be moderating this whole discussion to talk about how the Aave community shapes the future of Go. So without further ado, let's welcome all of them on stage.
Hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
David, I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Kartik. So hello, everyone. I'll just give a quick intro of myself, and then we'll intro each of the panelists and jump straight into our panel topic. And then we'll leave some questions to the end for the audience if you have any. Right, so a bit about me. So previously I was part of the Aave Genesis team. I think I was the 5th engineering hire at Aave companies. And then since then, I've been part of the Aave Grant Style as a reviewer. And then also now I'm building my own company called X23, where we apply large language models to Web3 data. So that's me, and I'll be facilitating this chat. I will now call on Fig to give an intro. Just a quick intro about yourself and background.
Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm one of the co-founders of Paladin. We actually started an Aave Hackathon 3 years ago. So time flies by. And I also happen to be on the Aave Liquidity Committee. So yeah.
Awesome. Andrew?
Yeah, so my name is Andrew. I'm a developer relations engineer at Aave Labs. I actually have a very similar story to Fig. My launch in Web3 career was actually 3 years ago at an ETHGlobal hackathon, hacking on the Aave protocol. And yeah, nowadays I work on documentation, developer support, hackathons, anything related to developer relations for Aave and Go.
Awesome. Finally, Paul.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Paul. I worked with Andrew and David in Aave a few years ago. Then now for a few years I've been working on BGT. Lately, mainly working on the new governance v3.
Awesome. Very cool. So I think we've got a good covering of the space, at least the Aave protocol space on the panel. So I'll go through some questions to dive in a bit deeper. Maybe let's start with Andrew about, let's say, your Aave companies. So maybe give us an overview of how Aave, the new Aave governance and Go interact, and sort of what significance does Aave governance have with the Go stablecoin?
Yeah, so Aave governance plays a very pivotal role with the Go stablecoin. I would actually highly encourage people to go to Etherscan and look at the actual Go token source code, because you might be surprised at how critical a role governance plays. Because essentially the Go token has this concept of buckets, and a facilitator has a bucket level and they're able to mint Go up to a certain level. And basically all of those decisions about what facilitators are enabled and what bucket capacities they have are all controlled by Aave governance. And I'm sure we'll dive into the panel specifically about the features of Aave governance that have been developed in the recent months that kind of lead to more participation. But at a high level, Aave governance basically controls the Go stablecoin supply, and also within the context of the Aave protocol, also has control over the interest rate mechanism and the different parameters that have to deal with supplying collateral and borrowing the Go token. So essentially every aspect of the Go token is controlled by Aave governance.
Okay, awesome. That's a good overview, and yeah, we'll definitely dive a bit deeper into those details a bit later. But let's just touching on that, the interaction between governance and Go. How are the changes made to, let's say, Go parameters at the moment, Andrew?
Yeah, so Go parameters basically follow the exact same governance process as the core Aave protocol. So Aave has a very structured process for essentially how something goes from an idea to actually being executed on chain. The Aave documentation goes through in detail basically all of the steps involved, from basically posting on governance forum, getting feedback, to snapshot, to an actual on-chain vote. And now with Aave Governance v3, actually having voting on cross-chain, so being able to vote on networks other than Ethereum mainnet, while still having Ethereum mainnet be like the executor of Aave governance. So essentially, that's how governance proposals come to the community, is through this process of Aave governance, which has on-chain and off-chain components. And once they reach that final stage of on-chain execution, that's when actual parameter changes are made to go.
Awesome. And most of the governance changes, they'll start on governance.aave.com, right?
Yes, exactly.
As
That's
usual,
the governance forum. And yeah, that's the main way to introduce ideas to the community.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And just quickly before I ask another question to another panelist, what do you want to see built by devs related to Go?
Yeah, so we have a lot of exciting prize tracks, payments, facilitators, vaults, and integrations. And really at a high level, the projects that I think we're looking for are trying to boost the adoption and understanding of Go. Currently, Go can be minted on chain, but it's kind of limited as to what you can actually do with this token. Because it is a stablecoin, it has a lot of utility for different payment use cases, or basically any on-chain action which involves transferring value. But right now, it just doesn't have a lot of adoption or understanding, or people excited about the unique properties of Go. So definitely trying to highlight what makes Go unique, and then also get it in the hands of users by building really nice looking and functional applications.
Awesome. Andrew is also one of the judges for the hackathon as well. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll go through them a bit later. All right, so moving on. So Paul works for BGD Labs, and they were the creators of the Gov v3. So Paul, how about give us a quick overview of what's new in Governance v3 for Aave?
Yeah, so basically, maybe like first on Governance v2, to have a bit of context, like you had all the process in Ethereum, right? Like you created the proposals there, you voted there, and they get executed. Then once we started deploying on new networks, on some of them we had bridges, using the native bridges to move the result of the voting to there, so there it could be executed, and the changes could be done in the protocol and so on, right? But this could only be done in some cases, and some others was controlled by multisig. So this was kind of not fully decentralized, right? So the way of v3 now, what we have is a fully decentralized system where in all the networks where Aave is deployed, it's controlled by the governance on Ethereum. So basically it's using Ethereum as a kind of settlement layer, while using the other networks that are cheaper or maybe more optimized and so on to vote. So this way you have, like, Aave can subsidize the vote, so it's even free to vote on those networks, right? Like we already have had 3 proposals with more users voting there. Even if their balance is lower, they can vote because it's not expensive to do it. So we expect more participation on this. So this is one part of it, like creating the proposals on Ethereum, voting on Polygon, and executing on Optimism maybe. And then we also have another important part, that is we have an increase in voting assets. With this new system, we have a way of utilizing the full balance of Aave. So before you could only vote with Aave and stake Aave, right? But now we are also adding Aave. In the future, we will probably add more flavors of Aave. So everyone that uses Aave in any kind of other protocol can still use their balance. So we don't lose people to vote. Other new things is, for example, we have now a representative system because, for example, safe wallets, smart contracts that have balances and so on, they can choose a representative to vote for them in another network. This way, it's another way of fully utilizing balances that are somewhere that could not actively vote before. So this would be the governance system, and this also works because we created a multi-chain system that we call the Aave delivery infrastructure, which basically is an aggregator of bridges that have different consensus in the different networks. This is a way of removing part of the centralization of the bridges, so we don't actually have to trust a single bridge, right? Like we don't have a point of failure. So for example, on Polygon, we are using CCIP, we are using layer 0, Hyperlane, and the native bridge, right? So once a message to start a vote goes to Polygon, it gets bridged by the 4, and then a consensus of 3 or 4 is done on Polygon to check that the messages are actually correct. So once this is done, the vote gets started. Yeah. So basically, I think it's a big overview of how this works.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, so I guess in summary, it's like more decentralization and then better participation by more people, make it easier or cheaper for everyone to participate.
Yeah.
Out of interest, you said there was more participation for the recent proposals. What layers or chains were getting more got the most participation? Do you know?
For now, I think the 3 of the 4 proposals that we have had since New Year's, in fact the last week, the vote has been on Polygon, because right now the only active voting networks are Polygon, Avalanche, and Ethereum. We always have Ethereum just in case all the bridges and all the other networks get hacked or whatever, it doesn't work. You can always vote on the same network and then activate a flag that will, there's an oracle that will signal on the other network, which enables some way of saving the situation. But yeah. So all the current proposals have been voted on Polygon, and if in the last 2-3 proposals on the old system, we had around 15 people voting, mostly delegators. In the current ones, we have had like 30 something voters. A lot of them voting with one token, like 1 token, 2 tokens, something like this.
Yeah.
Which
Awesome.
is quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And that's probably important information for the hackers as well, to know that most of the votes are happening on Polygon for V3. So it's important to deploy to Polygon if you want to experiment with Gov V3. So what are some things that devs can build on top of or integrate with the new governance V3 that you'd like to see?
Yeah,
maybe related to Go in some way.
Currently, for example, in my opinion, like we are missing a bit of visibility on representation. Like it's very good. Like we have the full delegation system and the new representation system and so on, right? But we don't have visibility on who is representing who, how much of the votes are being represented by someone, this kind of stuff, right? Which I think is quite useful.
That's sort of like analytics type stuff.
Yeah. This, and then maybe some mechanic to reward participation, to increase it would be nice. Maybe with Go. Yeah, I don't know. This would be good, I think. Like basically around building stuff around increasing participation in governance, which is quite important. It can be about visibility of the proposals, on trying to explain in a better way what this proposal is doing, what the effects will be, this kind of stuff, right? Because most of the proposals are like quite technical, like increasing the interest rates of some token somewhere or whatever, like that you need a degree in mathematics to understand.
Yeah,
this would be kind of cool. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of experimentation that could be had with making governance more fun, I guess. Fun for voters. All right, that's cool. Moving on to FigU. So you mentioned you were on the the liquidity, helping with the peg, restore the peg for Go. So I guess one of the, let's say, elephant in the rooms is with the Go dpeg, or with the current price of Go. Can you quickly explain sort of what happened and how is it being restored currently?
Yeah, sure. So maybe just to add something, I not only did we start at an AVE hackathon, but we're also an AVE grant recipient. So maybe some interesting conversation on this too. But to get back to the PEG, more globally, right now, what happens that Go was launched, it needed a bit more features to ensure stability, especially because it's a very popular tool, considering that Aave is a popular app. There's a lot of inflows that happened. But with the interest rates that rose around treasury bonds, what happened was that there were more interesting ways to farm than just holding gold. So a lot of people were basically minting it because it was one of the easiest and cheapest ways to mint it. They were selling it for other assets. So what we've been doing in the liquidity committee for starters was creating new incentive strategies to basically create deeper liquidity both for people to buy and to sell into the Go. This is not just simple 50-50 pairs, but more complicated liquidity shaping that was led by Token Breeze on the committee in order for us to have liquidity without biasing it towards what was happening in terms of transfers. And the second thing we've done a lot is creating incentives to basically have more Go that is parked in it. Meanwhile, we get first stability module that's coming and then the new interest rates. So it's a progressive thing. You can't just solve it one way. What we're really happy about is that when the committee really started strengthening, especially around Token Breeze, we were able to invert the trend from deviating from the peg back to deviating towards it. So it's a progressive thing. Hopefully, it will be done in a few weeks, if not a few months at best. But we're getting really close to it, and at that point, once goes back to $1, it will be able to shine as much as it's supposed to.
Yeah, awesome. That's an awesome overview. So essentially, it was around deepening the liquidity for people that wanted to swap in and out of Go. Am I getting that right?
It's one part of it. It's deepening the liquidity, but more than that, it's creating what we call healthy liquidity. Because what happens is that if people provide a lot of liquidity, but you have sell pressure, you end up at some point where there's 90% that's skewed towards against Go. So it's extremely hard for people to swap out efficiently. That's the first part. And the second part is the way you want to skew liquidity is a way to incentivize the behavior. So you want to reward people who are going to buy Go, and you want to, I don't want to say punish, but you want to prevent people from selling too much Go at every time. So right now it's entirely liquid, right? Just to be clear, but we basically created a system that rewards people who are moving back or who are actually moving into Go.
Okay, so incentivizing, moving into Go. That's a pretty powerful thing. And you've received a Aave grants. Oh yeah, you're receiving an Aave grant from the Aave grants DAO for that work, which is awesome. But
no,
besides
it's not for that work. It's not for that work. It's
okay.
we at Paladin we built a protocol that's called Julahan. That's an optimizer on top of Go. So it's basically the cheapest place for people to mint Go. The way we do is we socialize the stake Aave. And so people who have stake Aave can come in and deposit it on our platform. And people who own Go, who want Go, can basically come and mint it on our platform. And unless you're a huge stake Aave holder, it's probably going to be cheaper on our platform. What we're trying to build with this is I want to call it Aave Premium Club in a sense, where it's going to be the cheapest place for people to access Go simply by using the unionized stake Aave.
Got it. Unionized stake Aave. I like it. Very cool. With that in mind, what do you think devs can build to help with restoring the Go peg? Like, what would you like to see?
That's a really good question. No, it's actually a really good question because Go is built in a manner where long term there's going to be hundreds of opportunities around it. It's also harder as right now Aave as a DAO is the only I don't think it's Guardian the right name, but the only one that owns buckets and that can actually mint Go. That's I think is an important part because it limits the thing we can experiment around interest rates, around the different lending types, etc. I do think what will help the most Go is the generic answer will be just building cool shit. But the truth is that we need to build more global actual use cases for Go. Simply like people can hold and use Go as much as they want. The closer we get to you can basically just deposit your crypto assets on Aave and mint or even without minting it like in a Flash style, pay your rent, pay your groceries, etc. That's the closer you get to quote unquote mass adoption. And I think anyone in crypto dreams of being able to use Go that way.
Yep, that's a really good point. Andrew, I think you had an idea that you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good segue to say, like, the utility of Go comes from essentially what you're able to do with it, how you're actually able to utilize it both within the world of blockchain, cryptocurrency, Web3, and also just in day-to-day life. And I think that that's, one of the big things that will help Go long term is essentially just becoming more, abundant in the applications which you can actually utilize it for, and also emphasizing why Go is unique compared to not only other stablecoins but different types of payment currencies that exist today. So I think really the big thing which differentiates Go is essentially that it's tied natively to the Aave protocol. And the Aave protocol has a very flexible way to essentially collateralize different tokens and then borrow Go. So as Fig mentioned, the Aave facilitator is currently the only live facilitator, but we do have bounty tracks to essentially try to get people to build new types of facilitators and also new types of integrations with the Aave facilitator. And I think that those two things are really what differentiates Go and makes it really attractive to build on, is the fact that it is tied so closely to this Aave liquidity protocol, which offers all of these features that have been developed over the years and all of this infrastructure for governance.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess touching on that, we want hackers to build cool shit essentially with utilizing Go, and then also some ideas around let's say facilitators, either becoming facilitators or integrating with the facilitators. And any alpha to share on that, whether Andrew or Fig or Paul, on like how should the hackers be thinking about facilitators? Whether should they even try to become a facilitator, or should they try to integrate, or what sort of steps should be taken? Anyone wants to jump in?
I'm down. I'm probably not gonna give the most governance proper answer. I'm gonna give like the idealistic one, in the sense that I'm not saying Paladin wants to become a facilitator, but I think Aave should strive to have as many facilitators as it can at some point. There's a ton of risk management considerations, of course, but if Aave is building a new stablecoin and even a new currency eventually, and wants to become the central bank for it, the only model is to have multiple hundreds and hundreds of banks that are actually around it, that are going to enable it to become bigger and bigger. Aave is big, it has a crazy reach, and that's why so many people are here. But that's why I'm here, and that's why all of us are here, right? But we need much more than this if we want to deeply ingrain Go and Aave into the ecosystem as a whole. There's a ton of things that can be played around. I think one that hasn't been talked about a lot, it's probably something between credit delegation and what Go can do, especially because if you're minting Go with another stablecoin, you can actually do it at a high LTV. So you could do high credit delegation with very low liquidation risk, which creates some really interesting things you can do between different accounts and with different partners. So yeah,
That's a good idea, actually. So for those that don't know, credit delegation is one of the features in Aave. It's not used as much as it should be, but I recommend the hackers really look into credit delegation. It's a pretty cool feature, especially if you socialize the credit in some way. It's really cool. Andrew, I think you had some ideas around facilitators as well.
Yeah, so I mean, what Fig said at the beginning about how that's not really the governance approach to basically you want to create all of these different facilitators, and I would actually counter by saying that I think that is probably the most optimal approach for Aave governance, in the sense that anytime a new facilitator is added to Go, essentially there is a risk and a reward, and really the role of Aave governance is essentially to minimize the risk and maximize the reward. And I think how you do that is essentially building systems which are like more robust and experimenting. So I think that by having just one facilitator or having a very select core of facilitators with very high credit lines, essentially you're kind of putting Go into this bucket. You're saying it can only be used for these things. Whereas if you create a lot of different experiments with very low risk to the DAO by managing risk parameters and also trying to essentially amplify the value of decentralization, making sure that decentralization is at the core of any of these facilitators. I think that's really how you expand the design space. And so I would encourage people to think about how Go could be integrated into any smart contract. If there's a smart contract that you use today, whether it be a liquidity pool, different types of any type of liquidity market, anytime there is funds basically stored inside of a smart contract, and think about how could this potentially be utilized to facilitate borrowing Go or minting Go against this type of collateral. And any type of experimentation is good experimentation.
That's cool. That's a good one. Paul, did you have anything to add to this?
No,
Around
not really.
facilitators and
I agree. Like in the end, it relies, all of this, it relies on finding use cases or even creating them, right? Like on the situation we're in, like creating maybe even more powerful, because in the end, everything can be done and not much is done yet.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Very cool. Just I'm being wary of time now. I think we're running out of time. But let's go around the circle again for some hack ideas that you'd want to see. I mean, we've covered quite a bit of Go and some governance things, some facilitator stuff. Do you have any hack ideas that haven't really been mentioned yet? Maybe start with Andrew. I think you probably have the most ideas.
Yeah, well, I actually have a full presentation coming in a few hours, which is the main point of the presentation is actually going through the bounty tracks and giving specific ones. So I won't try to list the laundry list. I'll just plug my talk there.
Okay, all good. Yeah, so attend Andrew's talk if you want to hear all his ideas. Paul or Fig, did you have anything you want to add?
No, I think it's fine.
Yes, there was one question in the chat that I think might be good to answer. It was why is the fact that Go is native to Aave is an advantage? And I think it really comes down to the features of the Aave protocol. Essentially, the Aave protocol allows you to have multiple collateral positions and multiple borrow positions within a single address. And this type of flexibility really does not exist for any other type of stablecoin. So I think that that's really the key advantage to being native to Aave, is essentially that you can leverage the flexibility and this really robust framework of risk parameters to really fine tune how you're able to create really advanced positions with lots of different collateral assets, lots of different borrow assets, and then also leveraging the Aave governance infrastructure, which we've talked about here.
I think there's also another element to this, which is really important. It's how Go potentially can be a cash machine. And we have to say it, I think it's important, what it represents for Aave. The way Aave works a lot is that historically people deposited governance token and other different crypto assets and then minted stablecoins against them, right? And Aave would take a certain BPS of the interest rates. What happens with Go is that instead of taking a certain BPS of the interest rates, Aave as a DAO just takes all of the interest rates and can redistribute them. So there is a lot more flexibility about the way the fee can be shared around the system. And something we haven't discussed much is I think the Aave DAO would highly be interested, at least personally I would be, into what can be done with the different fee systems, for example, from a facilitator standpoint. There's a ton that can be done, and I look forward to see what people will build on these fronts.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, I think we're just out of time. I think there's one question that just came in on the chat. Do you have any thoughts on utilizing facilitators to create a cross-chain bridge with a native token of Go using tools such as CCIP? Does anyone want to take that question?
Yeah, I think like this, like the ADI could be used to basically bridge Go, right? Like Go is controlled by the governance. It's if we deploy Go in other chains, it will also be controlled by the governance on those chains, right? And as we already have this cross-chain communication system, which uses different bridges, the aggregation of different bridges, which is more decentralized than just using one, it could be cool to see like the use of this for the bridging, as it's already there, right? And I think it could be used even without like changing it at all, most probably.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that you're referring to the ADI like Aave delivery infrastructure. What's it called?
Yes.
ADI.
ADI. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So Sina, who asked the question, check out ADI. If you wanna.
Yeah, there is a method there to add allowed senders, which are the addresses allowed to do cross-chain communication on there. So basically, the need would be maybe add some other allowed sender for this specific kind of token bridging, and that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. So I'm just aware of time, and Kartik has just joined the chat.
It was an awesome discussion, and also thanks for making my life easier by monitoring the chat and just reading the questions directly. So I really enjoyed this thing, Andrew. I can't wait to see your talk about all the ideas that people can work on. And Paul and Fig, thank you for that amazing discussion. And David, thank you for moderating.
All good.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome.
Yeah,
good luck, hackers.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And with that, we are ready for our last talk of this summit, and it's going to be another panel here talking about the potential of RWA facilitators for Go. So for this panel, I'd like to bring on Steve, Assad, David, and Raul, and they'll be here having this amazing discussions on the future here with integration with RWA, and moderating this chat will be Steve. So without further ado, let's welcome David, Assad, Steve, and Raul.
Awesome. Thank you, Kartik. And thank you, everybody, for joining in and sticking with us. Super excited to chat today about real-world assets or tokenized assets, depending on your preference. I've got with me a couple of builders in this space. So two of them coming at it from slightly different angles. So Assad from Centrifuge, maybe coming from a little bit more of a DeFi background and having done some work with AviDAO in the past. And Dave from Hashnote, coming from more of a TradFi perspective. And then we've got Raul as well from Chainlink, who helping the guys build, laying out the infrastructure to enable more RWA. Chainlink have been building with Aave in DeFi since day one, really. So super excited to work with Chainlink more in the RWA space as that progresses. So before we get stuck into it, I'll just turn it over to the guys to allow them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they're doing in the RWA space. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Good man, Dave.
So my name is Dave Shapiro, CTO and co-founder of Hashnote. So we are an on-chain first asset manager. And as it pertains to real-world assets or asset-backed securities, like we've launched a product in the space that tokenizes short-duration yield from short-term treasuries. And so, we use that in a number of ways. Looking forward to exploring that.
Awesome, man. Nice to meet you all as well. My name is Raul. I work at Chainlink Labs. What I do there is two things. One is I support the Avo ecosystem in whatever way I technically can. So that means aligning roadmaps, making sure we're there where you need us. And the second thing that I do is I'm the RWA lead. So I basically manage the relationship with tokenized asset issuers and such across Europe and North America.
Yeah, awesome. My name's Assad. I do all things DeFi at Centrifuge. Most people know Centrifuge as having worked with stablecoins in the past, mainly MakerDAO. We've also done work with Aave in the real-world asset market, and we have a product called Centrifuge Prime, which is all about bringing real-world assets to decentralized organizations. And yeah, super excited for Go. I think one of the big opportunities, and Go's had this kind of since the light paper. Real-world assets is always a big potential here, so it's a really exciting topic. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So I heard at the end of the last panel there, they explained the concept of facilitators. So we don't really need to go into that at this point, which is nice. But I think one of the more commonly touted potential facilitators going forward is an RWA facilitator. So going to be super interesting to talk about that. But maybe given this is a hackathon and given we have an audience of developers, this one probably for Dave and Assad, it'd be super interesting to hear about some of the design choices that you guys considered when you're building out your products, essentially.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at it. You know, we put out a kind of some thinking and perspective in the Aave forums earlier this year before Go launched, kind of sharing what we thought about what you need to do to think about like real world assets and from a stablecoins perspective. And I'm sure Dave will agree. The hard part is for developers is that a lot of the work gets done on the legal side and the financial side of it, right? Making decisions about balance sheet space and how do you invest and allocate. But I think the biggest opportunity here, and I'm sure this is where Dave actually agrees as well, is that the biggest opportunity is building actually infrastructure to help improve the way these real world assets move around, especially when you have a decentralized unit of account like Go. So being able to take data from real world assets and integrate that with the stablecoin and react to that, so you have kind of a programmable balance sheet management, the ability to then take, let's say, assets that don't exist yet today, and in a more digital native form, and integrate them directly with stablecoin, I think is really exciting. And then ultimately, for all the traditional assets, the things that I think are really exciting is clearing and settlement. And how do you improve the facility for how you bring those assets on chain? To me, that's kind of some of the design considerations you have to think about, and where there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for the space to continue developing, especially with a stablecoin like Go.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to ask because it's pretty loaded. There's a lot of ways you can take this. I think if we take a step back, the thing that what triggered us to get into the space was there's still, like, even though we've come a pretty far away in terms of crypto for DeFi, like a lot of primitives don't really exist, or they're let's just say they're not yet in a really mature state. And so when we came to this market, and we do structured products, mostly like option selling stuff, like the basics of collateral at rest, and like what happens in the TradFi market, where you're actually, when you post collateral, are earning interest. And so we went out there and looked for building blocks that we could build on top of. At the time, there wasn't very many tokenized treasury products out, and then I think what was it? Franklin Templeton was the only one, but like that's just, you can't really do anything with those tokens. You could just hold them, and so that wasn't very helpful. And so when we built our product, it was really with the intent of like building on top of. And I think that the design choices we made were back to what Asad had mentioned. Like a lot of it is how you structure it legally, because in many cases the low hanging fruit right now is securities. It's plain simple securities. Like there's no getting around it, and you have to have some kind of legal structure. And so when you think about it from like a fund perspective, no one's really like, it's a pretty big misnomer that people are tokenizing treasuries. No one's tokenizing treasury. They're tokenizing the funds that are then transacting in the treasuries. And so when you're looking at it from a technical design space, like what is, when you buy into a fund, what are you receiving? And those are shares essentially. And like we already have primitives that are really good for representing share ownership in something that's fungible, right? As long as you're getting it at the right price, relative to people who entered the fund earlier than you did, ERC20s are a pretty like easy design choice from a technical perspective. But if you were going to go down the deep end of actually tokenizing the underlying product, like you'd have to figure out if there is a better specification for that, right? Like if you're looking at 1155s, ERC 1155s, or I think there's even like EIP 3525, where it like mixes fungibility with non-fungibility. Like those are kind of the design choices you have to figure out when you're putting together a real world asset. But when it comes to securities, I think, Centrifuge is doing a lot of this similar work that we've had to do. Like it's all fungible funds, right, in their shares. And so that's how we got to where we are.
Yes, super interesting. Raul as well, did you want to contribute or?
No, I think the difference is like, what are the design choices that you make as an issuer versus what are the design choices that you make as like a user or a consumer? Because in a way, even like Aave right now isn't so much a user, it's a platform where users come and might interact with their already tokenized assets. And I think for the end user, you're the person that ultimately actually holds the thing or actually puts them in Aave and does something with them, or would do so once they're accepted. For them, all that matters, but at some point they also just need to interact with something. Like they need to make sure that it's actually backed by something properly, it's actually secure, it's actually protected. that they can actually use it across DeFi. So the impact of what, for example, Dave and Assad are doing on their side massively impacts what a user, an end user, can actually do on the chain, because different legal setups have different implications.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll just throw this one out there as well. So, like, obviously, it's quite a daunting space. Like, more traditional assets, absolutely massive in size. Do you think? Do you first try and identify the type of asset you're going to tokenize, or do you first build out the infrastructure and then worry about the asset after? What do you guys think?
I think it's like a dual-sided marketplace, a little in a way, right? Like, the way we think about stablecoins like Go is you have to have balance sheet space to invest in real-world assets, and balance sheet space can come from a lot of different things, and ultimately you have to have also this ability to get to fiat. And once you have those considerations, kind of, let's say you can do all that, you can then choose to go into let's say your choice of the market. But for a stablecoin like Go, who wants to be really liquid and usable and kind of a transactional element for traders, probably means like very sticking to liquid, relatively safe assets, right? Then you have to think about building infrastructure. And like Raul said earlier, you can't just say, I'll buy this, this tokenized treasury, whatever it is, and just work with that. You do have to build infrastructure specific to all those legal foundations and whatever the asset is itself. And then having tech on that side is super important. So you have to do both kind of hand in hand.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It is a two-sided marketplace. I think sometimes as developers, we tend to chase shiny objects and tokenize something for the sake of tokenizing it. And if you do that, great. But like, what's the use, right? Like we've all talked about tokenizing real estate, but if you can't use it anywhere, why have we done it, right? If like, for example, depositing into Aave markets is like, you can deposit collateral, right, to then be borrowed out. Like if you tokenize my house, I can't deposit that anywhere, right? I can't use it as collateral. One day we may be able to, but as like when you're looking at building out projects, you have to figure out, is there a market for it? And I think that's why you've seen a lot of these tokenized products really start to take off. It's low-hanging fruit. It's something that people understand is that they're just getting negative carry by holding stablecoins. And there's a need for it, right? Because like the interest rate's high, people don't want to have to make a decision between keeping assets off chain versus keeping assets on chain. And so you have that two-sided marketplace. Now you have to build out more utility for it to really grow it, because let's be honest, like RWAs is still really, really, really small. Like as a market, like we talk about it, everyone hypes it up, but it is a really small market still. And so if we start talking about real estate and all this other crazy stuff that sounds cool, might not be really useful for another 10 years. We still have a lot of work to do to build out just even this easy stuff and build out that infrastructure to take it in and do something with it. And also like debunk a lot of the unknowns in the space, right? People think that, by holding a security, you're somehow a regulator is going to come after you. Like holding securities, doesn't make you like turn you into a regulated entity, right? That holding a security as an asset or as collateral, there's nothing that says that you will then have, the SEC will come after you. But it's those kinds of information that has to be put out there so that the whole space grows. And that's, I think Assad, you're absolutely right. It's a two-sided marketplace, and you need to have the users, the people who want the thing you're tokenizing. Otherwise, why are we doing it? We're just taking up block space.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's also important there to delineate between why you're tokenizing and what you're tokenizing. Like the whole crypto space is like what, $1 or $2 trillion in total market cap. If you look outside of the blockchain, it's like $95 trillion or even more than that, like in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. When that comes on chain, as for example, a lot of strategy consultants are saying, that doesn't mean they're going to be on Ethereum. A lot of this is going to be on like private chains. So that's going to be like banks in between themselves tokenizing their deposits or tokenizing shares and settling on a blockchain type system. That might even be like a private L2 or something like Polygon's Nightfall, but that's probably not going to be on Ethereum. And when you start, for example, putting a lot of houses on chain, for example, like a lot of real estate, when a government starts doing that, they're probably not going to do it on Ethereum, and at least not in the beginning, going to be able to put it into like DeFi or something. So in that case, you're not tokenizing something for me or for you or for anybody else. You're tokenizing it to gain, for example, settlement benefits or like slight efficiencies here and there. And that's a very different use case. And we're going to see both types of tokenization happening at the same time. But I think the most interesting piece of tokenization, and definitely the most interesting piece for Aave, is where you really need that demand side. You need people to say, I want to be able to have this particular asset from the real world in the blockchain to do something useful with.
Cool. Super interesting insights. So thinking more specifically to Go, so Go obviously at the minute is purely crypto backed. Like, what do you think are some of the advantages to diversifying the collateral base to RWA?
Yeah, we've seen, I think, in the market now, the way that other crypto native stablecoins have kind of integrated with real world asset markets, right? There's obviously MakerDAO is a big standout, and a big opportunity for them was to just take stablecoins that are on the balance sheet and earn yield on that, right? But two, I think that what that really did was actually, give a lot of significant revenue in a time when the market was down. So diversification is a huge benefit. And I think that's maybe like the first and primary benefit real world assets give compared to crypto native assets. But I also think it kind of provided an element of stability to DAI in the stablecoin itself, right? And when you have safe and liquid collateral on the balance sheet, and ultimately, U.S. Treasury bills is harder to find safer and more liquid collateral than that. You do get this element of being able to smooth out volatility and reduce kind of some risky nature of what's backing your stablecoin, which I think is a huge element of it, right? But there's a ton of design opportunities to start like extending into call it riskier collaterals, but still safe and still liquid. You can see the things that Frax has been doing, for example. You can look at other places in the ecosystem which are creating kind of like synthetic lending on top of real world assets, or even other stable coins that are just passing back yield in different ways and kind of providing like intermediation opportunities for their users. That's what I think is like really exciting about real world assets. Ultimately, it's a huge market that's diversified, and you can kind of make of it what you will, depending on, like Raul said, what your users are interested in and what they want to see from your stablecoin.
Yeah, I think for Go specifically, it's definitely an opportunity. I know that at certain times, you look at what are the options for Go, like where do they put their stable coins? Do they put it into the markets and start earning like pretty high interest rates? I think it's a different diversification question, but it's also like, Asad, to your point, treasuries are liquid, but it also depends on how you structure your real world asset and if those things are actually liquid and like how much of the underlying instruments you're buying and what is the duration risk, and do you have the ability to actually get out of those positions in the event that you need to liquidate, right? And when you're a decentralized stable coin using crypto, you can get a bank run, right? And how are you actually able to liquidate those positions? And I think that's really important when any native stable coin is looking at investing in real world assets, because you are essentially taking it off chain, and how quickly you can get those stable coins back on chain is critical. Because, like what happens if there is a bank run? There's no like gatekeepers, there's no safety mechanisms currently in place if everyone just at the same time decides to pull their money. And most of these products are at best, T1. We, depending on when we find out, we can honor T0 redemptions, but that's pretty unique to ours. Most others are T2, and when you have a bank run, that's a problem. Even with us, we're not instant, right?
Yeah, interesting. And talking about the the liquidation piece. So obviously that's a vital part of Aave in general. Doing anything with Aave, you need the ability to liquidate collateral types. So essentially what you're saying is we need more liquidity on secondary markets. So that does seem like one of the real challenges. What do you guys think are one of the catalysts to make that happen?
I think it's happening slowly, right? There's so many different pieces that are being brought on chain. Raul, which part of the on-chain ecosystem you're talking about is really relevant here. But there are many different people coming. The more tokenized treasury bill providers you have. That's like one aspect of it. Then you'll have more interested customers. I think ultimately what you need is like really like the marketplaces to trade and exchange those assets. It's really hard to do it on existing DeFi rails today, not even just from a compliance and kind of permissions perspective, but also just not every kind of DEX is actually well equipped to trade US Treasury bills, right? It's kind of like trading stablecoins. It's kind of different. Like fixed income trading is a kind of unique beast that I don't think we've seen AMMs really solve very well. That's one aspect that I'll say. I'm curious to hear what Raul and Dave have to say.
Yeah, I think in general what we've seen with a lot of RWAs is when they come on chain, the volume is quite low, especially when compared to, for example, market cap and such. And I think that's a bit the nature of the asset. Like you don't want a crypto asset. You specifically want something that's off chain, that exists off chain, and generally all the liquidity for that certainly is off chain. So there is an argument to be made that obviously we want like liquidity on the secondary markets, but if you think about it, the actual liquidity on the secondary markets is there. Like it's out of the blockchain. It's like on the actual securities exchanges, for example. So there's an argument to be made that rather than requiring a lot of liquidity in, for example, like a Curve or a Uniswap, you can instead basically have a guarantee that yes, indeed, you can swap this thing for the same thing in the real world and then be able to sell it there. If you look at other, like as Dave actually very well mentioned, is that you're not actually owning T-bills. You're owning basically a wrapper around T-bills. It's in a way, it's a little bit similar to an ETF where you put a wrapper around the actual asset. And ETFs also have massive requirements around market makers to be able to take your ETF, unwrap it, sell it, and then give you back the money and the other way around. And that basically keeps ETFs pretty much on par. And something like that on the blockchain would work basically just as well and allow you to tap into the liquidity off-chain.
Interesting. Yeah, sorry, Dave, go on.
No, I was gonna reiterate that I think that getting more participation from different venues, different OTC desks. Like at the end of the day, I think that there's also a cultural shift that needs to happen with at least the stuff that's taking off. These are securities, requires KYC. Like the degens and like people who are in the space aren't exactly super excited about that. But I think it's just a natural progression of where things are going as things mature. There is a need to become a little bit more open about who you are and if you want to be, completely pseudonymous out there, like these are just not the right products for you. But as like DAOs get more serious and get more, serious about wanting to create sustainability, this is a natural way of achieving some of that. But again, it's just the market needs to get comfortable around it, and then getting KYC and then getting permission, because these tokens, unless there's a permissionless one that really, truly becomes easy to transact in, it's going to be pretty hard for the whole.
And Raul, you raise a good point there about the liquidity living, like there is liquidity on secondary markets, it's just not on chain. Like, do you think it matters whether collateral types for Go live on or off chain? And like, if the collateral types are off chain primarily, do you think token holders currently have enough recourse if something was to go wrong? And just open that up to everybody, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make a sweeping statement there because this depends entirely on the project, on the asset being tokenized, how their structure is, and all these things. I mean, like, can you redeem whenever you need to, and how can you redeem whenever you need to? Like, you need to be KYC probably. Can you rely on market participants and all these kinds of things? I mean, like, the benefit of having crypto is it exists on the blockchain, and you know for sure that it's good. Like, they're good for the money because you can actually audit the code of Ethereum itself. That's not going to be a massive exploit, for example. Hopefully, well, with an RWA, inherently the issuer is allowed to mint more of the asset, for example, and also is allowed to basically usually stop redemptions whenever they want to, or when there's no liquidity, or when there's like a T+2 time and they just need more days to give you the money, for example. And in those cases, in those times, it's critical for example, the Aave DAO to know that even though they might have to wait a little longer, the money's actually there and they're good for the money. And that's going to take one part, just a lot of like risk analysis. Like the Aave DAO, I think, is actually very good in this and has shown that they have a really good team on this. to make sure that, yes, legally everything is correct and everything is set up properly off chain. And then secondarily, I would say you need to know that the tokens that you hold are actually backed by something off chain. And that's where something where, for example, the proof of reserve can help. And that way you can attest to the assets actually living and being held in the off chain place, and making sure that the issuer can't actually like massively start minting without having proper backing.
Yeah, sorry, just building on that rule. Like, I think there's a big opportunity for like developers, right? It's a hackathon talking about Go, to really take advantage of the data you get when real world assets are brought on chain. And really what I mean by that is you have structures that are being brought on chain. You have tokenization kind of assets, and yes, there's data off chain, but there's also a real big opportunity to integrate that data on chain and make it more usable for Go. And I think that's actually where you'll find the biggest edge, and that's like really the biggest untapped opportunity for stablecoins today. Is yes, they're allocating to real world assets, but integrating them into how the stablecoin actually operates and its balance sheet mechanics is a huge opportunity. And if you can do that in an automated fashion, I mean, that's where I think the ceiling is unlimited for Go and its ability to allocate to real world assets and use it effectively as part of just growing and supporting the ecosystem. And then you think about integrating other things on top of it, like trading venues or supporting other kind of liquidity mechanisms, even custom to Go on chain for real world assets. That's where I think it gets really exciting.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really interesting point, Raul. There is the off-chain piece of it. How do you verify that you have it? I think you guys have a pretty good product in the market for something like that. I think the problem that most projects need to grapple with is the incentives, right? Like, your product isn't free, and who's paying for it, right? And you guys are aligned as a service provider to somebody. You are you're incentivized to make the person that's paying you, feel like they're getting the value. Whereas I think in this space, that's kind of contradictory. You really want to have an adversarial party that will ensure that the value of what you're saying is actually there, because it's not in their best interest. They're not incentivized to like not have that happen, right? So I think that's something to really think through. And when you're putting together a project, is hiring Chainlink to do the off-chain reserves is interesting, but from an incentives perspective, it's a little bit weird, right, to think about. It's like what happened with the audit firms. When a company hires an audit firm to audit themselves, it's like, okay, but they're working for you and they're going to make the numbers do what you want them to do. But if you had another party that came in to audit you, the incentives are to make sure that everything's super clean. And so I think as the space matures, like, we'll see more of that. But it's interesting to think through.
Yeah, I think you kind of answer, you kind of give the answer in your message there, which is you can obviously have the protocol itself or the project itself saying, hey, we want to basically attest to this. You can also have the Aave DAO saying we will only accept RWAs that are tested according to a particular standard, for example. And in that case, that is a possibility where, for example, the Aave DAO pays for it and the actual client of the attestation would not be, whoever's paying us, but rather the Aave DAO, for example.
Exactly.
Cool. I didn't even know I was laying you up to talk about proof of reserve there, Raul, but nice job.
Thank you.
Dave, you touched on the minting redemption side there. Would be super interested to hear just a quick run through as to how that process works. Same story with you, Asad. Like, I think just super interesting to hear what goes on in the sausage factory, essentially.
Yeah, happy to talk through it. So I guess it really depends on how you structure your product and what your token actually represents, right? So typically when our investor client comes to us, and this is already someone who's KYC, they've already been whitelisted, they're able to hold the token that represents share ownership in this fund. They can deposit through fiat rails, or they can go through crypto rails. And crypto collateral that we take is in the form of USDC, PyUSD, and a few others. But then also, investors still use wires and fiat. And so that's also a way of doing it. If you're doing things on chain, there's transactions you can make with our protocol that will basically buy into the fund at the current share price. And so the share price gets updated on a daily basis based on the activities of the fund. And so you can transact and have an atomic basically swap where you deposit a stable coin and receive a token representing the assets of the fund, basically struck at the NAV of that day. And then same on the redemptions, depending on what form you're taking, if you're taking it in kind, or if you're looking for to receive, you subscribe to stables, but you want to take it out in USD. That's something that can be arranged. So it just depends on how it works. But on chain, again, in a lot of these things, there is liquidity. Like there's not a ton of liquidity on chain usually for these things. If there is, then you can just automatically redeem. But if not, then there's a process for liquidating the assets off chain, converting that to crypto, putting it in a position where you can then burn the shares that you have, and in turn receive your investment back. And so it all depends. And as you build out a project, you have to keep in mind, like, who is your target client? Like, are they going to be comfortable with sending in wires, or are they going to do it all on chain? And depending on that, you're going to have certain processes in place to start sending money to bank accounts. What happens on liquidations? These things exist in different places, right? It's not like Hashnote's fund is just sitting in a bank account, right? There's prime brokerages, there's custodians involved, there's a whole like TradFi infrastructure that's sitting behind what this token represents. And whenever you're jumping chains, right? TradFi in a way is a chain, just not one that's public. It takes a little bit of time, and so that's the
so how quickly can I go from having Go in my wallet to then minting your treasury token and then back? Because of course you support Go.
If during market hours, because we are a TradFi product, there's wires involved here. And so during market hours, usually on Fed wire schedules, you can get in most of the day, and then anything getting out in small size is within, you can do it on chain immediately for, I think, up to like $1 million. Anything above that can be T0 if we find out early enough in the day. Again, it kind of depends on wire schedules. If we can't get a wire out from bank accounts, from prime brokerages to bank accounts in time, then it'll have to be T1. But if we find out early, it's T0. And then I think the important piece to figure out is how you're actually implementing it on the back end, right? Like how much liquidity do you have? Are you actually buying long-term treasuries? Like those things do you have duration? So you may not be liquid on some of those things. So it depends. Like in our case, you can redeem within T1 up to the full amount forever. Everyone can come to us during the day and say they want out, and the next day everybody can get out. But it all depends on how you structure your product, and not all products can live up to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to add to an answer like that, really thorough, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of these things are going to look similar kind of at the conceptual level. And then to Dave's point, the differences are in just like the operational nature of how the fund manager and the fund is set up and things like that. So maybe I'll share like kind of a couple different things here. Like on the Centrifuge side, we have Centrifuge Prime, which has its own legal infrastructure. And what we do there is we set up kind of an ability for a DAO or decentralized organization to have kind of a tool that it can use to KYC with certain investments. And then you can have the investments and redemptions triggered kind of on chain in an automated fashion. And then I think one of the opportunities, again, for builders, and just talking again about like really where I think there's some interesting, like really also demand there, right, is actually building kind of better, like call it Web 2.5 rails. So as Dave's point, you're dealing with bank wires, you're dealing with kind of traditional banking payment systems. So do half the transaction, then the other half of the transaction is obviously on chain, right? Usually going through like a fiat stablecoin and then into kind of the stablecoin of choice for, let's say, users. I think there's a lot to be built that kind of connects those two systems better together. Now, building payment rails is obviously a huge, daunting process, and it's big, but like there's a lot of people in the space, fintech startups. I mean, you can imagine even Plaid has a role to kind of play here if you can build integrations with it appropriately. And like that type of stuff, I think really does meaningfully move the needle for how you can improve the way these things are done. There will always be some operational limitations, but you can improve the way you manage those limitations and like have visibility into them and risk manage them and things like that as well. And then maybe the final statement too is when we talk about liquidity, right, for a stablecoin, there's always going to be a buffer that needs to be kept, and this is like really the work for like the facilitator. The way I believe it's structured and set up to manage is keeping some part of the stablecoin in on-chain stable representations, and then managing the off-chain representations and kind of appropriately ensuring the liquidity buffer so that you can, fulfill redemptions on-chain and then go into your off-chain holdings, when you need to as well. Only after that buffer has been eaten through, and those type of things I think go a long way. So it's operational on the back end. There's kind of all the operational wiring that happens between the two kind of worlds, and then there's also all the operational stuff that's done on-chain, and that's what sets facilitators apart ultimately. And is where there's a large part of design opportunities too. Steve, to go back to your first question.
Cool. And just quickly, Raul, wanted to bring you back in from the sidelines super quick, just to give you the opportunity to talk kind of more broadly about the data and interoperability side of things in RWA. And then we will need to wrap things up. I'll maybe do one quick fire question after that. But Raul, just quick question on the data and interoperability side.
Sorry, is there a question still coming, or just how did that interact with the actual tokenized assets?
Yeah, my bad. So to be super clear, so just talking more broadly about the role of data and interoperability in RWA. Like I know you've already touched on proof of reserve, so don't necessarily need to get into how Chainlink's building out underlying infrastructure to enable Go facilitators, because I think that plays into things. But just broadly on the data and interoperability side.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think as they've very well noticed, like you're bringing something onto chain, and it's basically a wrapped version of whatever exists off chain. And if you really think about it, it's just a super plain vanilla ERC20 with added trust assumptions. So what are you really going to use this thing for? Like, it's an ERC20, but now somebody has the keys to be able to mint something, and that's a feature, not a bug. So how do you ensure that it's safe? How do you ensure that you can actually use it somewhere? How do you can know that what is the actual price of the underlying asset? What is the actual price of the asset on the secondary market? Because on the secondary market on chain, usually the volume is pretty low. So how do you know what the actual price of something is? You need to be able to use it in DeFi. You need to be able to have price feeds. You need to be able to bring it across chains and use it in all across the ecosystem. If you're just issuing a tokenized asset and you're not bringing with it basically all the plugins that you need, then what you're doing is effectively just capturing possibly the slight benefits of like faster settlement and all these things, which for a tokenized asset on a public chain is basically not there, because you're not actually moving the security, you're moving a wrapped version of the security. So if you want this thing to be useful on permissionless blockchains, you need to bring an ecosystem of data. You need to tell us, what is this thing? What is the price? Where is it held? What are these people doing? How can I bring it across chain? And all these kinds of features, because otherwise, again, that's just a plain vanilla ERC20.
Cool. That's super insightful. We will have to finish up now, but just maybe quickly, quick fire going around the room. Any other words of advice for aspiring RWA builders? And then you can potentially give us an answer as to what an ideal split looks like between RWA and crypto-based collateral as it relates to Go. Dave, you kicked us off, so why don't you start again, and we'll let everybody get home or finish up their weeks.
Oh, you're muted, Dave.
Sorry about that. I talked about this in the past. I think that the thing that we have a really good opportunity to do is to come at it from a very come at this space from really a considered legal structure, right? I think that a lot of times as a founder, and I'm guilty of this myself, is you want to build quickly and get to market quickly, and so you cut corners. I think when you start doing that, you build up a lot of legal and regulatory debt that's very hard to pay back. And so coming at this, we have an opportunity to really, I mean, the whole goal is to create a better financial environment, financial ecosystem. And so figuring out the structure that your RWA should take is really, really important, and don't skimp on that because it will really hurt you in the end. And I think that it really comes to light when we get blowups, right? And like we're in this space and blowups happen more frequently than most, but like it's not so different from TradFi either, right? Like you just don't hear about those as much. And so the legal structure that you take is really important, and try and make it as friendly to the holders of your whatever you're issuing as you can, right? In the event that things blow up, don't have a legal structure that makes it very murky as to what it is that your shareholders are actually able to get to their assets with, right? Like if you're a wrapper of a wrapper of a wrapper, like this is a problem. It's not really clear what's going to happen when things blow up. And I think that moving quickly leads to situations where when things blow up, people lose money. And so I think as we start to bridge TradFi, chain and public blockchains, like let's be extra careful about how we do it. It's not time that you're going to be upset you spent. Otherwise, I don't know what the right answer to the second part of your question is. I think it just depends on each DAO, and like for Aave, how you balance like what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. I think there is a role to play, but I don't think that there is a straight up answer that makes sense, and it might be a floating one, right? As time goes on, like that number changes from being high or being low to being the opposite. And so I don't think there's the right answer. It's just understanding what the current state is and adjusting to it, and having the mechanisms in place to quickly adjust in when markets change, which they inevitably do.
Awesome. Assad?
Yeah, so answer your first question, I think things to consider is, maybe picking up on what Raul said, one of the ethos of Centrifuge is trying to bring as much on-chain as possible about the fund structure, about the assets, about the portfolio side. And we're trying to serve as a platform for people to build on top of. So if you're looking to build an RWA space, my plea to you is to come to Centrifuge and build with us. And, let's bring an ecosystem of data to our partners. And we hope Aave will be a partner one day on Go. And then for your last question, maybe look, Dave's right, but maybe the fun answer is I think it should be at least as big as your crypto native allocation. Right. There's always room for real world assets. There's always room for a slice of pizza. There's always room for real world assets. It's my new thing.
Nice. I'll split the difference on this one. I think you need to build a sandbox for developers that's both safe and fun. Like there needs to be enough features to the actual token, enough data that you can do something useful with it. But the core needs to be super secure and safe. Like you need to have your shit in order. And you need to make sure that you can do something useful with it, because as a developer, you just want to take the token and do stuff. You don't want to think about all the stuff. You don't want to do 5 weeks of due diligence that you have no idea how it works. Just take the token, run with it, use it as collateral, do whatever you like. I think that's kind of the key. And in terms of the split, I think it's way too early to answer that, to be honest. Honestly, the amount of stablecoins that we see is very limited compared to the amount of stablecoins that I think we're gonna see. And a stablecoin in a way is very similar to a bank deposit. And if you look at the 10,000 TradFi banks that exist, they're backed by completely different types of collateral. Like if I take my money to one bank versus another, they're going to invest it in very different ways. So I think we're going to see a lot of different, let's say 1,000 flowers bloom in that way.
I'm sure you were messaging me 100% in the chat there, Raul.
Maybe.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much, guys. I hope that's been useful. If anybody has any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, good luck to everybody participating in the hackathon, and thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
And thanks for moderating, Steve. It was an amazing discussion. I think
Cheers. See you.
One of the best things about all of this is that RWAs will become the talk of the town very soon, and you're going to get a look on how to think about it and how to reason about that right DeFi integration there. So I'm glad that we had this discussion in January 2024, and we'll kind of benchmark this with when 7 months from now, this kind of takes off. We have the early ideas for how to think about all these things. So that's awesome. And that was also our last talk for the summit. So with that, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch the kickoff and hear our 3 amazing talks for LFGHO Summit. And to all of our 800 plus hackers, I wish all of you happy hacking, and we'll see all of you on Discord. So take care, everybody, and be sure to say hi to all of us on the LFGHO chat channel and Discord. See ya.